Hey everybody, Brian Von Vier here. What are your favorite RPGs that nobody has ever heard of? That's right, the obscure little RPGs that are TTRPGs or otherwise off in the little corner of the world that no one else touched. Goblin Quest by Grant Howitt. You play 5 goblins that are part of an army. You are destined to fail terribly and die horribly. The real way to win is to die attempting something ridiculous. Underground. I don't play it much anymore, but it still holds a place in my RPG heart. Alternity. Alternity was TSR's sci-fi game published shortly before they were bought up by Wizards of the Coast, and it actually got a decent amount of support during the transition period. It's still one of my favorite sci-fi games to this day. That said, it definitely shows its age at this point. While there were a couple of attempts to revive it, they both fell flat and didn't match up to the original. Engine Heart. Just gotta be the brave little toaster. I think I'm pronouncing this right. Nahual. Kind of a werewolf of the apocalypse, but with Mexican shapeshifters who use magic to hunt angels and demons, as both are a colonizing force and also profitable. Angel. Set in a post-apocalypse Europe that has reverted to feudal society and tech, the player characters are angels who range out from their mountain fastness to combat horrific insect demons. Spoiler alert, the angels are actually children who were taken from their families and implanted with wings and lost nanotechnology that provides their angelic powers. The demons are actually self-replicating bioweapons from the apocalypse. The default campaign frame has the angels growing up, becoming wiser to the world and its corruption, and breaking free of the brainwashing of Roma Aeternae. The German version apparently uses a cool tarot card draw system. The English one uses a fairly lame but workable 3rd edition era D20 conversion. Songbirds 3rd edition is my game of the year for 2023 and has not stopped buzzing around my brain since June. I'm also obsessed with it, and now Snow's wilder output like .dungeon / remastered also this year, also great and unknown. I will once again raise the flag for Heavy Gear. There are dozens of us who remember this game. Dozens! Well, tell us about it, damn it! I can't pull off hipster enough to have a nobody's ever heard of it, so how about surprised I have to explain it to folks who are serious in the hobby instead. Unknown Armies. It's clearly not unknown, but it's more obscure than it deserves. I really like Silent Legions as a very lethal, flavorful TTRPG for doing eldritch horror. It also has amazing rules and flavor for randomly Fenraring eldritch gods, which are fun to use even outside of the game. Los Muertos. German dark comedy TTRPG kinda inspired by Grim Fandango. Was released in full color print and amazing art, plus a whole campaign is included. PDF for free. The player characters are dead and enter the netherworld as skeletons. The realms of the dead are separated into various sectors and levels, and their mission is to reach the final layer, meet God, and discover the meaning of life. Starts off amazingly funny and gets pretty sad near the end. Earth Dawn isn't a small game, but most people have never heard of it. It's a mishmash of what if you're playing D&D, but things like classes, levels, and hit points were in-character concepts that had reasons. Like, rather than pretending it makes sense, it actually does. I'm not sure how to explain it, but the feel is not goofy high fantasy. A rich and specific setting with a specific history that explains treasure and trap-filled dungeons around the world and has elves and dwarves without feeling like a cheap Middle-earth wannabe. Also Cthulhu-esque horrors that feed on misery, fear, and pain. A magic system that involves a lot of tactical choices that aren't just, who do you target? The mechanics are unique, not bad, but definitely modern, though an FU-based version, Age of Legends, does exist. Honestly, Earth Dawn had similar mechanics to short rests and wounds long before D&D 4th edition or Star Wars Saga. The basic idea is that everything, skills, etc., is ranked by step, which is roughly the average result of the roll. This makes rolling a little unintuitive, as getting a +1 to your ability can completely change which dice you roll. Typically, people only change the dice when their stats change, and just take the bonuses and penalties to their roll for temporary modifiers. Well, on the other hand, the step system makes for a great experience. You get bell curves, so you know you will most often get, and it's easy to get a rough estimate of how challenging something is. Earth Dawn is loved by its fans for the setting, but the system is neat. It's a game with high-ish fantasy, races, classes, hit points, levels, all things that normally detract from a game in my opinion, but Earth Dawn has made it work for decades across multiple publishers. And just as a bonus, it actually ties into the world history of Shadowrun, so if a group wants to explore that, they can. My favorites right now that need more recognition are Tales of Argosa, Liminal, Sigil and Shadow, Those Dark Places, and lastly, Paleomythic. I've run each one at least once in the past year, and they are fantastic. Tenra Bans 0. What the hell is that? It might be better known than I think it is, but the fact that it was originally printed exclusively in Japan feels like that ought to make it obscure enough just to fit the bill. Philosophically, it's different from any RPGs I've ever played, and that's why I love it, even though its actual moment-to-moment mechanics aren't very interesting to me. I played a game called Continuum in the early 2000s. It's about time travel. I had a great time, no pun intended, but the group I was playing with didn't quite click on it, so we moved on, to my lasting regret. Thieves Guild, a fantasy TTRPG dedicated to thief PCs from the 1980s. It was a lot of fun, but I can't even find PDFs on drive-thru. Fortunately, I have my originals that were all hole-punched so that they could go into a 3-ring binder. Oh, those were the days. Haven, City of Violence, gritty, modern setting based on crime thriller movies and books. It was good stuff, even if the system sucks. There was a D20 modern conversion of it at some point, but I'd really like to get the rights to it and update to Savage Worlds or something similar. Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai. Yes, the same Ghost Dog as the film. Fairly light rule set that allows you to make a modern mafia crime kind of game. The book also serves as a pretty thorough treatise on the film. Talis Santa does not get the love it deserves as a rules-light D20 RPG. The world has some cringy bits, but it's a wild love letter to Jack Vance and Ralph Bakshi's old-school fantasy. I like Barbarians of the Ruined Earth. It's a black hacks inspired by the 1980s Thundar the Barbarian and He-Man cartoons. The crazy swords, sorcery, and super science is just so much fun. Sky Realms of Jorn is a well-designed world with beautiful, evocative art. Neoclassical Geek Revival has one of the worst names, but the game itself was well-designed, with some great innovations, and the art in the new editions that were kickstarted really delivers the flavor that rules do not. I played Sword World a long while back, and it was fun. Probably not something Americans who speak English would have ever heard of, as it's a Japanese TTRPG. I liked it a lot more than the flavor of D&D at the time, which was 3rd edition. It's a D6's game like WEG Star Wars. Polaris. Chivalric tragedy at the utmost north. That sounds really interesting. I gotta Google that one. It's not as niche as a lot of the mentions here, but my friends and I have had many fun hours playing Cyber Generation, which we called Cybergen. It's a fun spin-off of Cyberpunk 2020 where you are kids with nanotech superpowers. I GM'd it and had a blast, as did the players, which were my brother and our friends. Print Weaver is so neat. Use your fingerprints to create a character. I also really enjoyed the Crownless by Marin Musings. Righteous Blood, Ruthless Blades looks like a ton of fun, but I do not see any sort of discussion online about it. Babushka, a Polish samizdat TTRPG from the mid-80s that parodied communist-era failures. I saw a mimeographed copy at a Detroit convention around that time, and it's been my white whale ever since. The Hateful Place makes Mor Borg look like Teletubbies. Oh god. For example, with magic you can cast a kill spell. Auto success. Rules as written, your character will also die within 24 hours. Oh, death is no release. Your spirit then inhabits a demon being tortured for eternity, etc. Black Void, a fantasy RPG that is neither D20 based nor set in the standard fantasy milieu. Play bronze-aged human refugees living in a city of fantastic and alien beings. Learn esoteric philosophy to work magic, or just do it the old-fashioned way with blood sacrifice. That's a commercial and a half. Step into the void between worlds and risk mutation and madness. Itrus By, an RPG based on 1920s European surrealism. There's a deck of cards that have severe narrative or mechanical changes to the game, like, everyone move one chair to the left. You are now playing that character. If you are in the GM seat, you are now the GM. That sounds like it's going to be real chaotic, and I love it. Rune, the only RPG I've seen with competitive game mastering. Each player makes a hero and a dungeon. There is a budget point for building up the dungeon and populating it with traps and monsters and treasure. Take turns GMing your dungeons. Score points by getting PCs as close to death as possible without killing them. Loosely based on a third-person hack-and-slash Viking game from the 90s. Lots of semi-obscure but not unheard-of games I love, but I'm not sure that's what the OP is after. So, I'll mention Alt NYC 88, a risograph art punk RPG set in a mythologized world of 80s urban action movies. Think The Last Dragon, Wild Thing, throw in some John Carpenter and mix thoroughly. Written and illustrated by Pontius Bjorlin. Over the Edge, Jonathan Tweet's fever dream of a game. Mad Scientist? Check. Aliens? Double check. Tulpas? Check. Sorcerers? Check. Inspired by William S. Burroughs' Naked Lunch. The game rules are light and simple. The possibilities are endless. Great game. 2 thumbs up. I just got Necrosis, and it looks rad as hell, but no one even talks about it. I've also been interested in the trophy books, but haven't been able to find anything out about them. Phoenix Command. Lots of rules to calculate a hit, such as skill, weapon accuracy, muzzle climb of the weapon itself, bracing, etc. Then roll a D percentage. Bullets are rated for damage class and penetration value. Basically, how big is the round and how deep can it punch? Hit table is a D1000. That is not a typo, and I'm scared. The tissue, bones, and organs have hit values that determine if the round passes through based on its penetration. Then the amount of damage is figured based on the DC and the location sensitivity, i.e. muscle versus liver. There were even rules for glancing off of the bone. Break! It's fairly new, but nobody's really talking about it. But I think it deserves more attention than it's getting. Night, a French TTRPG of epic horror. The world is full of monsters, but you can actually fight them. Well, kinda. An English translation is on the way. Troika! It's f***ing awesome! Most people on this sub have probably heard of it, but outside communities like this, it's not well known as far as I'm aware. Blood Shadows, a fantasy game set in a world that has roughly 1920s technology. Very film noir. First thing that comes to mind is Lowlife, Rise of the Lowly, which I have the first edition of and didn't realize it got a, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Red Reged release, so maybe it isn't that obscure. What does that mean? But I love its playful, the garbage pail kids of Hyperborea aesthetic and funk jive vibes. It's pretty nasty though. Also, Nova Praxis. I found its post-singularity setting ridiculously easy to make adventures for, and I had players who loved all the transhumanist stuff. Makes me wonder if there's a Deus Ex little TTRPG out there somewhere. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Do you have an RPG that no one's heard of? Put it down in the comments below and tell us a little bit about it. I don't want just names, I want deets. Give me the sweet, sweet deets and we'll put it in a video. We love you all, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye for now.